Guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel, and today we got a very special treat for you guys. This is the Calypso Evolve 100. Now, you may already have heard some of the demos of the Calypso amps, and probably from channels that lean much more into the much heavier types of music, but today I want to sort of showcase a little bit different sounds from the amp, and mainly like kind of how I focus on my channel, the 90s and 2000s rock, which is what my band plays, and we'll kind of get into my thoughts on the amp and how I feel after playing it at one of our shows, how it worked out on stage and all that good stuff. We'll go through some of the features, and you obviously heard two different channels there, as well as the amp boosted with the JHS Klon. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the amp. So I reached out to Alex on Facebook and said, hey, I really think that these amps sound great, and I would love to kind of hear what it sounds like in the kind of non-heavy metal context of the music that our band plays. And he said, sure, let's go ahead and see what we can come up with. So this is a 2-channel amp, and it, at first glance, I thought it shares a lot of similarities with the Soldano SLO. You have 2 channels, you have a gain control for each one. The clean channel has a bright switch, and also it has a toggle where you can go to clean or crunch. Now, you heard it with the crunch channel engaged. So just like with the SLO, you have a clean and crunch that share one channel of the amp. What I like is that you have this bright switch. It's a 3-way toggle. so you can really fine tune exactly how you want the top end of the clean channel or the crunch channel, whichever you're using. Now both channels, they share bass, mid, and treble controls, as well as a sweep control, which if you're familiar with kind of like those mid-range sweep controls that have been on quite a few amps over the years, that's basically what this is. And in my opinion, this is probably the best implementation of a sweep control that I've used, because it's usable through the entire range. Like, it doesn't get too extreme in either all the way one way or all the way the other way. It's just got a great sound everywhere and very usable as well. Each channel has a volume control, and then there's a global presence and depth. And on the back of the amp, there is also a negative feedback, which kind of controls like the amount of punch that the amp has. I'm running it right around 3 o'clock, so it's not quite all the way up, but it's pretty close. And I feel like the amp really feels great once it's past halfway up. Now the lead channel is interesting because it has a 3-way voice switch, and I know it's hard to see with the chrome plating here, but the lead channel has a 3-way voice switch as well as a 3-way bright switch. And again, the voice switch and the bright switch really let you massage and fine tune exactly how you want mostly the top end of the amp to react. And again, there's a lot of flexibility. I like having the bright switch all the way down, but then compensating with the presence. I feel like with the bright switch all the way down, which is disengaged from the circuit, I believe, it has a little bit extra fullness and fatness in the lower mid-range that I really like, that you can't dial back into the amp, but you can dial in more presence to compensate for whatever bright capacitors, I'm assuming, something like that. Whatever bright capacitors are not being used when the bright switch is all the way off. But we'll hear it, how it sounds with all 3 voices and all 3 of the bright switch settings. And one other thing to kind of disclaim here is that this amp took an absolute beating during shipping, and these prototypes that Alex sent out, they've got plexiglass front panels here, and the amps that ship out to customers, they'll have full metal faceplates on there. So this one unfortunately did take a little bit of damage, but other than a little bit of cosmetic damage here on the faceplate, the amp functions flawlessly, the tubes are fine, everything sounds great. So it's nice to hear that the amp can really take a beating and still function perfectly well, and that the amps that you guys get, if you purchase one from him, they'll have, you know, metal on the front instead of the plexiglass. So just felt like I needed to kind of get that out there in case you were wondering what might be going on with the faceplate here. So yeah, all right, let's let this thing rip again, and we'll go through all the settings and the controls here. Hear it without the boost, hear it with the boost, and yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm on the clean mode now, and the way that I like to run the clean mode is exactly like how I like to run it on the SLO. I like to take the channel volume, absolutely crank it, and then have the gain function sort of as my master volume, because it really doesn't add a lot of actual overdrive to the sound. It just makes it louder. This is a very big, open, and loud clean channel with tons of headroom. So yeah, this is how it sounds. So when running in the clean channel, in the clean mode, I like to have the bright disengaged. It still has a good sparkle to it, and it doesn't get overbearing when you kind of dig into the strings. So here's the middle bright position. So you can hear how it's a lot, it cuts much, much harder. And the top bright position. Very, very aggressive. So you have the flexibility there. Now, while it kind of can be harsh on the clean mode, it does actually work very well when you go into the crunch mode. So let's go ahead and flip over there. Again, like I said, the clean mode on this amp is big, open, loud, huge headroom. It's very, very fun to play. So let's go back all the way off on the bright switch, crunch mode. Drop the volume back to kind of where I had it there. So you can hear in the crunch mode there without too much gain, the top end is a little bit soft. And that's where these bright switch positions come in handy. The middle position for me is sort of the sweet spot, and it plays really well. The top end plays really well with the lead channel and also with how the amp sounds when you boost either of the channels. So in my opinion, like that's where I prefer to have it. So let's go ahead and hear a little bit more gain from the crunch channel, and we'll also start messing with the boost there. Okay, let's go over to the lead channel, which I'm sure is what most of you care about more. Okay, I'm gonna play for a little bit here and I'll go through the different positions on the voice and the bright switch. The voice is over here on the left and the bright switch is on the right. And right now the voice switch is all the way up and the bright switch is all the way down. And each one sort of manipulates the top end in a certain way and in different ways. So it's really neat how you can sort of mix and match positions on the two different switches to really dial in how you want that top end to kind of cut in the sound. So, all right, let's go ahead and get going here. Voice switch is all the way down. So you can hear with both of them disengaged, the amp has a much more soft and rolled off attack. However, the presence control in this amp is very powerful. So let's go ahead and I'll crank it up just a little bit and then kind of go back and we'll play with these sounds again. All right, voice switch in the middle. All right, bright switch is in the middle. All right, so as you can hear, there's a lot of flexibility there and a lot of ways that you can kind of fine tune and tweak the top end. And let's go ahead and check out that sweep control. All right, it's set to the noon position. So even with it all the way counterclockwise, which pushes that mid-range like in a really, really awesome and big way, it's still usable. Now, it might be a lot of mid-range, but it's still a usable sound. And of course, we can dial back the mid-range if we want to. We can dial the presence to cut a little bit harder in the top end. So again, there's a lot of flexibility. This is the most powerful control on the amp right here. And you can get a huge range of sounds just from that one control. All right, sweep is back in the middle and I dropped it down. sucked out a ton of mid-range, is really scoop sounding, and it lost a lot of its punch. And I think that the way the mid-range, the lower mid-range, the way that frequency in this amp punches, taking that away can really hinder the sound. But again, it's usable. It's not an offensively bad sound. It's just not nearly as powerful and just kind of guttural as it was earlier. All right, let's play around with the controls and kind of hear what they do. All right, let's go to the presence and the depth. It's at noon right now, all the way down. Really powerful control there. All right, the depth control is at halfway. Even maxed out, the depth is a very usable sound. It's not woofy and muddy or flabby or anything like that. It's just big and clean. I like that. All right, let's go through the gain on the amp. We'll start it as low as it will go and produce some sort of sound, and then we'll just kind of crank it. All right, so about halfway is where it kind of taps out, and again, it's not dissimilar from the SLO. With this, the SLO at half gain is borderline unusable for me, and I really hardly ever take that amp past 9 o'clock. If I want more gain, I'll leave it at around 9 or 10 o'clock and then hit it with a boost, and sounds awesome. So let's go ahead and do that on this amp. And again, I will back the gain to 9 o'clock here. A little bit more. Bright switch off. A little bit more presence and a little bit more treble. Voice switch all the way up. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up this video of the Calypso Evolve 100. And another big shout out and thanks to Alex from Calypso for giving me the opportunity to try this thing out, to take it on the stage, and to bring it here in the studio and show you guys. Now, speaking of on the stage, let's get to it. It's time for the post-gig report. All right, so I used this on stage with the Whitebox 212, and it absolutely was a monster on the stage. Just 100 watts, just ripping loud. And I ended up using the crunch channel with the Klon almost the majority of the night. It sounded really, really good. Now, I did switch over to the lead channel a couple of times, and I didn't have a ton of gain dialed in. It was sort of like what you just heard with the crunch channel boosted, but with a little bit extra, just kind of like meat on it. That's really the big difference when going from crunch to lead. The lead channel has a lot kind of beefier of a sound, and you can get a very similar amount of saturation to the sound and just have a bigger low end and just sort of like a beefier sound. And that's kind of how I had it dialed in, and it absolutely it was outstanding on the stage. And if I had to levy one minor gripe with it, it's really the crunch channel on the amp. It reminds me a lot of sort of how the 5150 kind of how it goes about business with the blue channel, where it has a great low gain crunch where you can do a lot of like that blues, heavy blues, classic rock, modern rock, stuff like that. But you know that the structure and the way that it's delivering the sound, it just wants to go much, much harder. It wants to be pushed a lot harder. So while it does deliver a very good kind of hard rock crunch sound, you're not gonna be getting those vintage JTM 45 or Plexi type sounds from this amp. It just doesn't have the structure for that. It wants to go fast. It wants to be pushed hard, and it excels just fantastic in that regard. So it's really not, I don't really think there's anything that Alex can do about that. It's just the way that the amp is voiced, just like how that EVH is voiced in a similar way. So it's not really anything I would kind of hold against the amp. I think it sounded great on stage. It worked really well for all of the songs that we played. Like you heard, it does the 90s rock thing extremely, extremely well on the crunch channel, and still having the ability to flip the switch, kind of tweak the volume and the gain control, going into the clean mode, and just having this big, huge high headroom clean sound. It really is a very flexible amp. And even though I didn't show the negative feedback control on the amp, it really sort of just kind of tames the overall demeanor of the amp. And I feel like its sweet spot, like I said, anywhere from halfway to 3 o'clock is where I felt like it felt the best and kind of delivered the sound in the best way for kind of how I prefer it to sound on stage. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, again, big shout out to Alex for sending me this to try out for a little while. Unfortunately, it does have to go back, but I'm glad that I got to spend some time with it. All right, so if you want to check out these amps, I will have a link down in the description to his website so you can get more information on what these amps are. And I will have affiliate links to Zound's website for all the rest of the stuff that I use to make this video happen. And I'll have my email address down there if you want some Neural DSP or Tonex captures of this amp. I have got those, again, right around $1 per capture, but there are about a dozen of them. I've got finished 30 cabinet, greenback cabinet, and lots of DI captures so that you can use your own impulses. No boost, boosted, just the whole range of sounds, and they turned out really, really great on this thing. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.